So the preseason, unless you know it, unless you have a cheat sheet like David Diehl had, it's nerve-wracking because that's your first professional game.
Without a doubt.
Right? It's not the first game of the regular season because for a lot of rookies, they won't be playing. Nowadays, I think it's changed a little bit. They push rookies to get started a little bit earlier than they used to. But, I don't remember mine, interestingly enough,
really?
At all. Because I think Rodney Hampton started, and right after that game, he hurt his knee, and it was like it basically signaled the end of his career.
And at that time, you were returning kicks and punts, too.
I was returning kicks, but I don't remember it. Like
really?
It's washed out. But I do remember the first preseason game for Jeremy Shockey. Now, Jeremy Shockey, and this is
Hall of Fame game.
Hall of Fame game.
I remember it. I was watching it.
I hated rookies because they don't get it, other than David Diehl, who was starting almost immediately. Most rookies just don't get it. Like, the pace is different, right? You're used to mini camp, and maybe you do a joint practice, but usually not. So you don't know what the speed is like, the actual speed is like in the NFL. And so rookies just don't get it. They're playing slow. They're playing, confused, whatever it is. Jeremy Shockey in that Hall of Fame game, he changed my attitude towards rookies.
When he stole somebody on the Colts' soul after he ran over him?
He stole somebody's soul, a safety soul, and he could have went out of bounds. That's the thing.
He turned it back in.
He caught a pass going down the sideline. Most rookies are like, I got my first catch. I'm going to step out of bounds. Jeremy Shockey turned back in. I think we were playing the Texans, maybe?
I think it was the Texans or the Colts. One of the two.
I think it was the Texans because he did it to the Colts when we went to the NFC Champion. No. The divisional round of the playoffs in San Francisco. He did that to the Colts. He turned back in. I can't remember the safety's name, but he just trucked him, right? Didn't even try to avoid him. Just trucked him. And I said, that rookie gets it. So while the preseason in a lot of people's minds means nothing, means this game is, let's just don't get hurt. For rookies and for some veterans who are evaluating rookies, it can mean a lot. So,
without a doubt.
So these games that are kicking off tonight, and there's a bunch of them, 11 of them we talked about. The Jets are playing the Giants. The Indianapolis Colts are playing Buffalo. We're going to go through a bunch of these because I think there's some important conversations that are going to take place based on the starts of some of these rookies. For the most part, it feels like they're insignificant, but in a lot of ways, this first game will tell you a lot about a lot of these kids.
It most certainly will, because when you're out there and you go get your first or two series or whatever you get, you always talk about let's go in there, let's get some confidence, let's get a drive going, and let's get out of here healthy.
Yes.
But right from that point, you want to see how these young players are going to respond under the lights. Number one, when they don't have a coach in the huddle or next to them like they do during training camp practice to give them all the tools. But secondly, this is now probably the 13th time that you've gone through an installation in a really vanilla offense and defense in a simple, basic game plan. You want to see what guys understand what they're doing and how they understand the playbook and the checks and audibles. Because if they can't get it in preseason week one, when you've already had today for most of these guys, the walkthrough before the walkthrough, then these guys don't get it and understand the opportunity that they have sitting right in front of them.
No, you're right. And I think that's what we're going to look for, particularly with the quarterbacks that are playing tonight. And there's a bunch of them that have, I think, things to prove. Daniel Jones, a lot of people have championed how smart he is. We talked about this on Tuesday, Dave. He's going to play a lot. Eli's not going to play, maybe not at all, probably. I think Josh Allen has a lot to prove after last year. The success he had as a runner, he was very inconsistent as a passer. But they're playing Indianapolis Colts, and that game is going to be quarterback focused because on the other side, Andrew Luck is not playing. Brissett has to. Look, I don't want to predict that Andrew Luck's going to have injury issues all season long, but if he does, the Colts got to figure something out.
No question.
Right? There's an expectation for them this year. I think Washington against the Cleveland Browns is an interesting game because Baker Mayfield has all these new tools. How long he plays, who knows? But we're going to see Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry and David Njoku with Baker Mayfield for the first time. So these games tonight, it don't mean anything. Win, loss, whatever. It doesn't mean anything, but we're going to learn a lot from what we see.
Yes, we will. I mean, let's start off with Josh Allen for myself.
Yeah.
I want to see him run an efficient offense. get in and out of the huddle, get people lined up, be precise and be accurate throwing the football. We know when he's on the run and he doesn't have his feet planted in the ground and have that platform, you may have the strongest arm in the world, but if it's not accurate and you're spraying all over the field, that's not going to make you successful in the NFL. Not to mention, when you look back at his last season, he held on to the ball each pass 3.2 seconds, which was the highest in the NFL and which is the highest since Tim Tebow in 2011.
But it's not all his fault.
No, I understand that. But wouldn't you think when you have a damaged offensive line and your receivers aren't that good, you're getting rid of the ball and you're reading those reads perfectly?
Yeah, LaToya McCoy standing back there. You know, Shady, take that. Right?
No question. So you know that they've upgraded their offensive line. You know that Brian Daboll has now had a full entire offseason with Josh Allen to tailor-made game plans towards him to where he can still use his athleticism and his feet to keep a defense honest on the backside to play 11-on-11 football, but still be proficient on first and second down.
Yeah, no, I think, and that game is interesting, obviously, and we'll stick it here for a second because of Andrew Luck. We've talked about Andrew Luck. I don't know if we did this with you on Tuesday.
No, we didn't get into Andrew yet.
I mean, I have this saying, and Ronnie Barnes said this to me. Now, Ronnie Barnes was the Giants' vice president of athletic training. He's basically our head trainer at the New York Giants. And Joe Montgomery, who played at Ohio State, he was a good, stout, like little runner. This was pre-you.
Okay.
This is before your time. And he was good. Like, they wanted to get him on the field. This is before I'd established myself. But he kept getting, like, these nicks and getting banged around. And he'd have a knee here. He'd have a hamstring, a quad, or hip or something like that. And then one day we're out. He's fully healthy right now. He's in practice, not a game. He's in practice. Goes and takes his steps. Talk about practice. Tears his Achilles.
Ooh.
And I'm like, man, this kid just can't, like, buy a break. And Ronnie Barnes says to me, he's got bad cells, right? So in my mind, bad cells stuck with guys who always are hurt.
Yeah.
And so BT hears me say this all the time. That's the genesis of it. I don't think I've ever told people where that bad cells
and the other one you
came
can't,
from.
You can't make the club in the tub.
You're right. But the bad cell thing came from Ronnie Barnes saying, yeah, Joe Monkey, he just has bad cells. That's something where you can explain why he keeps getting hurt. Andrew Luck is getting very close to being in my bad cell category. Very close. Now, currently, we know what he has. He has a calf injury that he says is not an Achilles injury, but we saw what happened with Kevin Durant when they said it was a calf injury and not an Achilles injury. I think he's going to be okay, but they've already said he's not playing or practicing for this entire week. If this pushes into another week, the Indianapolis Colts got to figure out something. Now, Jacoby Brissett, we saw play a couple of years ago. He was okay. He wasn't great. He was okay. But if Andrew Luck is going to be injury prone in the next year or so, they got to find a solution. They got to start thinking about a solution, and immediately they need one for this year if he has some complications from this calf injury. So, yes, we'll look at Josh Allen and his evolution. This Indianapolis Colts-Buffalo game is probably the most important one to watch simply because if Andrew Luck can't play, what are the Colts doing?
See, for me, I'm not that concerned about it because
I wouldn't be either if he wasn't always hurt.
But the thing is everybody and myself was overly concerned last year when he wasn't throwing the football and came out and played the way that he did.
True.
And if you remember, before one of the ends of the half, I want to say in Houston, they actually brought out Brissett to throw the Hail Mary.
Right.
So Andrew Luck didn't have to do that.
Right.
So you know that they're being overly cautious with him because they understand the magnitude of having him on the field and off of the field. I also think part of him having the bad cells was bad judgment calls going back to 2016 in his shoulder and not getting it repaired right away and trying to fight through it and not listening to the medical staff or not getting the right advice from the medical staff.
And the fact that they had a terrible offensive line.
Oh, I know.
He was running for his life.
You saw the upgrades that they made with Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith last year. Anthony Costanzo started getting back to his full self after I think it was a hamstring or a back injury going into last season. So you know that they finally built that offensive line around him just like they had to do with Peyton Manning in his first couple of years. But you are 100% correct. When you have this different combination of wide receivers now coming in, and you know that you have to take Frank Reich's offense to the next step in your second year, that timing, that muscle memory, the pace of the game. You've got to do it during the preseason because you and I both know practice does not simulate.
No, practice is nonsense. You're running around in underwear half the time these days. That's helmets and no pads. There are a lot of good games and a lot of interesting matchups that will happen tonight. Again, the games don't mean anything, but the matchups are important. Baker Mayfield, Dwayne Haskins is on the other side of that one. We hit New York. We didn't hit New York yet, but we will. Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold. But the most interesting one, because we're all waiting for this, Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury's air raid offense in Arizona. Can it work in the National Football League?